Welcome to Stealership Stories, where you came for an oil change and left with a new transmission.
That can happen.
It does happen.
It does happen.
You got to make sales somehow.
Right.
And what better way to jack up the numbers?
We got some extra transmissions in the warehouse.
We ordered one wrong for the car the other day, and we got to sell it to somebody.
We got to put in something. You're the lucky customer.
You know, there are times you bring your car someplace, and everything's working hunky-dory. You bring it into the shop, you put it up on the rack, you do the oil change or whatever else it needs, you put it down, and the motherfucker won't start.
Or anything. We see it a lot with air suspensions, raising up air suspensions and letting the struts relax in a place they haven't been in years, or a year at least since the last service, or all sorts of different scenarios. But we run into weird things after popping the hood and doing something as simple as an oil change.
You know, a lot of people think that the car has to tell you, hey, I'm about to fail, so watch out because I'm about to break down. It's not the case. Stuff just fails out of fucking nowhere. So they'll be like, oh, I got no sign. I got no warning on the dash. There's not always a warning light to something. There's not always a telltale sign or a noise. Sometimes shit just cuts out and doesn't want to work anymore.
Or it seems to be a common thought that my car is doing something unusual, so I'm going to go get it serviced. That's going to take care of whatever unusual symptom or issue that I did not bring to the service advisor's attention on write-up. Then it could make that issue worse or stand out more. And those situations end up coming back, and you find out that this has been going on for a long time. Or with modern test equipment, we can see when the first time the fault occurred, so we know that it didn't happen after the service. Right, it has been going on for quite some time.
Ever since you changed my oil, my check engine light came on, and you check the data, and it says no, it's been on for 5,000 miles, and the guy just didn't catch it when he brought it in, or whatever the case is.
And that's technicians' responsibility too, to make sure any things like that are noted. Cracked windshields, damaged wheels. If there's anything that could be a potential issue, there's multiple stops along the write-up process from the time it gets first checked in. Not a bad thing to try to upsell someone wheel repair if they can be fixed and doesn't need to be replaced. There's usually a guy that comes around to dealerships weekly or monthly or biweekly to fix wheels.
There's usually two. There's one guy that comes by and fixes wheels, and there's the other guy who comes by and says he can't fix your wheel and still charges you $65.
And spray paints some silver glitter on there to cover it up. But anyway, I digress.
Digressing. I can tell you that I have been witness to some cars, or a car that came in for a simple service and it left with a transmission. The story goes,
I didn't realize that was an actual story.
Oh, yeah. It's a story.
I thought it was a metaphor.
So, going back to Michigan, where I started my journey, right? Where I started my technician journey, way back in little old Rochester Hills, Michigan.
Is that a suburb of somewhere larger?
It is a suburb of Detroit. What up?
Detroit.
Yeah, Detroit.
Oh, yep. I'm surprised you don't have a big D tattoo or claim that as your...
I do, but that was back when lower back tats were popular, and I don't...
Got it covered up.
I hide it now. So
put a Aniel behind it.
Yeah. Aniel, yeah. So I come back from a road test, and I pull in, and there was this gentleman we work with who, believe it or not, he was second in our training class. So let me back up a little bit further. I went to a mechanic school. After mechanic school, I was able to get into Mercedes-Benz, a training facility or a program. It was called Elite. And we went there for 4 straight months on nothing but Mercedes. And after that, they sold us to dealerships and they picked up our school bill. This guy was second in the class, I believe. And the smarter they appear on paper, the where I'm going with that.
Yeah,
so
in practice,
we're still, I don't want to say friends, but acquaintances. I'll talk to him once every 6 years and pass by him on Facebook or whatnot. But I come in from a road test, and he walks up to the car window, and he's got his hands in his back pockets, and he's kind of rocking on his toes, And I roll down the window, and I'm like, "Hey man, what's going on?" And his reply was, "I don't want to tell you." Well, you got to tell me now because I don't understand why you're even doing this. Well, okay. Well, let me show you what was happening. Okay, cool. So he brings me over to the car. He's looking up and he goes, "So I'm taking out the transmission so I can do the rear main." And I look on the ground and there's the transmission. And then he tells me, "And I dropped it." I said, "What do you mean you dropped it?" He's like, "Yeah. So this transmission is laying there cracked in half."
Owie.
And I go, "Well, where's the trans jack?" And as I look for it, it's like 10 feet away. He goes, "Well, here's what went down." So I was taking out the trans and I was wiggling it loose and I noticed it wouldn't come out. I found I had one more bolt left in it. I couldn't get to the bolt because the trans jack was in the way. So I rolled the trans jack out of the way and I proceeded to remove the last bolt. I got the last bolt out and the trans fell.
Seems like a bad idea.
Then he goes, I tried to catch it though. And he put his arms out and he had scrapes and scratches all down his arms. He goes, I was not successful. So this trans fell from about 7 feet in the air to the ground, cracked in half. And we're talking like an old Mercedes, like a 70s or 80s. It was like a 123 body or something like that. So, the only place you can find them at was like a boneyard, so it was like $3,500. And I think they made him pay half of it to that, just the kind of shit that guys do that they don't realize, it could have fallen him. Could have hurt him. He tried to catch it. I mean, he was not
terrible move.
Not too bright. There's some good stories from that guy. We'll be revisiting him in the future, but
it does happen. We've had on 2 different occasions, I recall cars being towed into the dealership that had oil changes. These were Audis. Both of them were Audi A4, something along sedan type vehicles that had an automatic transmission. And those cars have kind of a flat underside that it does tend to blend together between the engine and transmission. We had 2 separate ones one was done at Walmart, one was done at another dealer that had the transmission fluid drained instead of the engine oil.
Oh, man.
So that happens too. And that's why we kind of encourage going to some place that at least is familiar with your Toyota's particular make and model
for that.
The vehicle.
The front diff was really close to I think it was the front diff that was really close, or the transmission to the oil pan. And they would go into a Jiffy Lube or something for an oil change, and next thing you know, the car won't move.
Yeah.
And it does need a transmission.
Right. Or hopefully if they catch it early enough, you still have to get it towed to a dealer. It's not something that's going to be able to be set and filled and done properly. And usually at that point, the client's not going to want to have the same oil change guy do their transmission service.
Oh, for sure.
After they just drain the wrong fluid out of the wrong orifice.
I've even had a friend's mom call me and she goes, "Hey, Louie, how much transmission fluid should my car take?" And I'm like, well, let me look it up real quick because I don't know offhand. I'm like, about 3.5, 4 quarts. Why? What's going on? Well, here, I took it to Jiffy Lube. They sold me a trans flush. They dropped the pan or whatever they had to do to drain the fluid, and they don't know how to fill it. So they want me to tow it to a dealer.
Oh, my God.
Why would they even sell it? Well, they thought it had a dipstick, and they didn't realize it. Well, then how did they know that I needed a fucking trans flush if I had no goddamn dipstick, right? It was a Chevy Malibu. And I'm like, let me talk to the manager. I'm like, listen, here's how you do it, right? Let me explain to you how you can do it so you got to sell her or make her tow it someplace else. Like, and don't sell this shit no more.
Do those pump up from the bottom?
No, you can fill it from the top.
Oh, you can.
But you check it on the side like a diff. You pull it and it drains out and drips out
the side. That's a lot easier than most of the German stuff.
Oh, man. And, so you're going to hear us talk a lot about referring you to the dealer. That's just where we spend our careers. There are some good aftermarket shops out there.
Absolutely.
Now, most of the times, who is the owner of an aftermarket shop is an ex-dealer guy.
Yeah.
They got fed up with the bullshit of the flat rate and watching other guys get all the gravy, or they just got tired of doing the same stuff over and over again, or
warranty work.
Yeah. They just decided that they wanted to be their own boss. There's a couple different reasons, but most of the time an aftermarket shop. And when I say aftermarket, again, I mean something that's not the dealer or manufacturer backed. And I don't mean Midas or Meineke, none of those, what do you call it? Like franchise? Yeah, none of those chains. Those are almost like, I don't want to offend anybody that may work there because there are some good ones out there. I believe no matter where you go, there's good techs and there's bad techs. Yeah. There's the guys that want to excel and learn as much as they can. Then there's the guys that think they know it all and only know what they find on Google or YouTube or what the buddy next to them tells them, right? Or they're just there to change parts and the manager's diagnosing stuff. You never know what goes on in those shops. But my experience, when we've dealt with those cars that come from those shops, they don't have the equipment to do every make and model, right? Maybe they're geared towards American cars. Maybe some are geared towards German cars. I just found recently there's something called a Bosch certified service facility,
right?
Which is what the local other shop is.
Local independent.
Yeah, so you can go on the Bosch website. They've got a good
reputation for a lot of different things, especially older vehicles, and that's where it kind of comes in. If you're maintaining or repairing an older vehicle, a lot of times they'll have a guy there in the shop that he may have retired from the dealership and just wants a part-time job, but really knows his shit, or he just wanted to get away from it and have fewer hours. Whoever knows the case in each of those scenarios. But you can always find typically better suited technicians for older cars, and some of those, unfortunately, hole in the wall shops that may not look the greatest from the outside, but may have an old guy or two.
And he's going to know his stuff.
He'll really know the shit for the older ones for sure.
Yeah. So there's a couple guys I help online that there's a guy in New Jersey, a guy in North Carolina, South Carolina, Louisiana. I'm making connections around the USA. And a lot of times I'm able to tell a customer, hey, what's your zip code? And find them a guy that I know locally. Mm-hmm. Right. So if you're listening and you're out there somewhere and you do work on cars, shoot us an email. Stealershipstories@gmail.com. Let us know where you're at. We'll drop your name out there. So maybe somebody local in your area might need some help. We can direct them to somebody that knows what they're talking about. Almost like an Angie's List type of thing.
Yeah.
We'll do a Louise list,
like it.
or a Gonzo list, or whatever you want to call it. But some of these guys that do have these at home shops, or their own little hole in the wall shop, I'm not telling you to avoid anyone. Find the one that works for you. Find the one where they take care of you, they listen to you, they're going to do what you ask, they're going to advise you and let you know when you're wrong, right? You don't want someone that just does everything you tell them to do, because that's not good. Let's say you say, hey, I watched this YouTube video. Mm-hmm. I think it's this. I want you to put this on. And they go, okay, that's a red flag, right? So there should be more like, well,
right.
We're not sure that's
no kickback at all.
Let us look a little bit just to make sure.
Should be a red flag.
Yeah. So you can be one type of a customer and only be a good customer for 3 out of 4 shops. You can be one type of customer and be bad for 3 out of 4 shops, and only one of them you need to go to, right? Because they like to yell at customers and you like to be yelled at, right? So
it works out.
It does. There is
symbiosis.
There's some place for everyone.
That's right.
Just like there's a seat or an ass for every seat, there's a customer for every shop. And you may not be right for the dealer. You may feel that it's too expensive, which they're pricey because we talked before. It's a big building we got to pay for.
It is.
On top of that, there's a lot of people we got to feed. We have all the tools,
test
the equipment. Yeah, the
special tools that get sent from the manufacturer.
And stuff costs money.
Without, there's nothing you can do about it. They just get mailed in every month or quarterly,
and you got to pay it.
And it may not be something you ever use, and it's still $500,000, $1,500 tool that's going to sit in your tool room, on top of the leasing of the computers. Anyway, I think people understand the cost that goes into dealerships. We were talking a little bit earlier too about knowing the right questions to ask. Correct. When you're presented with either a repair solution or a next step needed to be taken in a diagnostic process. There's a lot of people that just don't know the right things to ask. And I think it's can be a daunting. Being in the business, it makes it a lot easier for us to kind of realize what is going on, what's right and wrong about what people are saying. But if you're not used to dealing with cars, and a car is just something you use to get back and forth to work, and you just want it to work and work right, you may not know what follow-up questions to ask or any sort of response when someone's presenting you with a $1,000, $1,500 repair bill. And hopefully we can help you get through some of those trials and tribulations too.
Well, let's say you got a car that runs, it gets hot, and it shuts off. Okay. It's happened to you 5 or 6 times in the last 4 years, right? Well, it can be a bad thing if it shuts off at the wrong time, obviously. So you take it to the shop and you say, here's what happened. What can you do to help? And the technician's like, well, we can't get it to duplicate. So on the technician side, what options do you got? A, just give it back and say, sorry, we couldn't find anything. Or B, let me hang on to it and drive it until we can get it to do it. Or C, here's the most likely cause. Can you authorize us putting this in there?
Right.
At least we took a step towards diagnostics, right? So, and again, that term diagnostics, we'll get into a little bit of that too. It's a very loose term. It can mean a plethora of things. Diagnostics pretty much means if I'm going to work on your car and I'm doing investigative procedures, it's diagnosis, right? Mm-hmm. Or what's the other term? Like a educated guess, right?
It can be as simple as hanging new parts on and seeing if what it is. Obviously, a lot easier to do while a car is under warranty. You can follow a
lot easier,
replacement tree. The fault code says this is the faulty item. Put that in. If it doesn't fix it, we know that was not the problem. It's not that cut and dried. You have to have something to back it up, but at least the client's not out that money at that time to test something.
Just had another a personal episode of my own. So my car's about to go. My car just went out of warranty. I was 200 miles from warranty, and this thing sounds horrible going down the road, like shock strut, sway bar link, something like that, just rattling a high hell. And the cold weather doesn't help either, right? So I bring it there and I drop it off, and I'd give him as much info as I could. You know, here's what it does. Here's what it sounds like. I don't want to tell you what I think you should replace because I don't want to construe whatever your guy. Yeah, I don't want to be that guy, and I don't want your guy to take on my information and say, why put that in? Because you told me so, and it wasn't it. You know, and now we can't put nothing else in. So I says, here's what I think. Here's what it resembles. You know, I don't work on these things all the time, so have at it, right? Just, I don't need a loaner car. Do what you can do. So they take it and they drive it. And here comes, you know, a phone call. We can't get it to make any noise. You gotta be kidding me. This thing sounded like shit driving into service drive. So I go down there, spend my lunch hour down there. I drove with the tech, and his reply was, "Oh, that noise? You're complaining about that noise? I would just live with it." Like, well,
he said that?
That's what he said.
That's
and I'm
amazing.
like, all right. Now I know this guy. I've worked with him before for a short stint, right? So I says, well, you know, maybe if this car were 10 years old, I'd live with it,
right? Whatever.
But it's 3 years old. It's just about to go out of warranty, you know, and I don't want to be that customer where I want stuff free. It's not the case. The case is, you know, just it broke. I only drive like 12,000 miles a year in that car anyway. So I'm right in line with my 3 year, 12,000 miles a year. And he's like, well, you know, if that were me, I wouldn't complain about it. I said, well, you know, I appreciate that, man, but it's not you, it's me. And now you obviously hear the noise. He's like, yeah. I'm like, all right. So, you know, we switched seats, and he went to the back seat or whatever. And he's like, man, I can really hear it back here, but I don't know what it can be. Well, I don't know if you should tell a customer that, right? But, you know, like, well, it's kind of your job to figure out what it can be, right? So
that's not my problem.
So I leave it there with no hopes that I'm going to get a positive call back. And, you know, if anyone there is listening, I'm not talking trash. I'm preparing for the worst, right? So lo and behold, 2 hours later, here's what I got. Nothing. I loosened some stuff, drove without the sway bar on it, you know, disconnected. The noise is still there, but I don't know what it can be. And I'm thinking, well, if you took the sway bar loose, there's only one other thing that can make a noise like that. It's a strut, right? Or a strut mount, you know, so, you know, something. I go back in there and they're like, you just got to wait for it to get worse. So I'm like, well,
200 miles.
How many more miles do I got to wait to get the worst? Like you recognize there's a problem. So if this were me, I would say, here's what I'm going to do. You take a loaner car. I'm going to fix your car so it's done before you go. But these American manufacturers, remember a couple of years, they were closing down, right? They had no backing or there were too many. There was one every freaking 2 blocks, right?
Yeah.
So
oversaturation.
They are so tight with their warranty. I believe they call back almost every part to make sure it failed.
Sure.
They were telling me they want pictures. They want like excessive documentation showing why they changed the stuff, which it's good for the customer because you know that they're at least doing their diagnostics right. But in my case, it was bad because now I got a car that's out of warranty. And he gave me the old speech about the Goodwill. Well, you know, we can cover you with Goodwill up to so many miles and so many years. So we know you. We know you're an ex-tech. We're going to take care of you. Just let it get a little bit worse so we can find it, right? But then in my mind, I'm like, well, if you had a tech back there that can handle it, why do I have to wait for it to get worse? You recognize there's a noise, right? So don't just think that someone who doesn't know about cars gets
a runaround.
Yeah. I'm an actual technician that if I brought it back there or if I spent time on my own car, I guarantee you I'll fix it. But should I, because I bought a car that came with its own warranty and I don't have the time or the resources to do it anymore. Sure. So like I expected them to do their job. Right. So
yeah,
I appreciated the service manager for saying, look, we'll take care of you. Just let it get a little bit worse. I'm cool with that. But I would have been more happy if I left with a fixed car. Because now I got to make another return visit. And now I'm that guy who brings the car in before warranty's almost out with a noise that they know it's there, but who wants to fix this but you? It is what it is. That's what you bought, right? Like, well.
And from the technician point of view, too, if he did spend 3 days diagnosing it and it ended up being sway bar links, he's going to get 8 tenths, you know, like that was change sway bar links.
He was more concerned about that. And he said the manager even scolded him for spending so much time on it. And the manager said that to me, and then he backs up. Well, let me rephrase that. I wasn't mad that he was trying to diagnose your car. I was mad that the time he spent, and we know we don't have a resolve. I said, okay, I get that. But, if that were me, if I lost this one time to know what this noise is, that I can make that money back on the next 14 cars that have the same problem, because I've already been there.
Yeah.
Right? I know what it's going to be. Right. So we drove a used car. He goes, well, we got a used car so you can compare, because I don't think the other one, I don't think that made noise from whatever the other tech that did the used car inspection, right? So we get in it and we drove it 5 feet. Holy shit, this one's twice as loud as yours.
No way.
Oh yeah. So I went from the front seat.
Service bulletin. Was there no information on it?
It's a caravan,
Google
right?
technician.
Like, do they care about it anymore? Like, it's a mommy van. Who shoes? What are you doing driving this dude? Like, should he be in a Challenger, right?
Right.
Something like that.
Trade it in.
So we started talking about dropping your car off for one thing, and next thing you know, it needs another. Again, things do not have to give you a warning. I pulled an Astro van up on an alignment rack one time doing alignment. I did the alignment, and the motherfucker wouldn't start. The fuel pump went out right there on the rack.
Yeah, that's happened.
Customers in the window watching, because now all these service centers have to have a goddamn window because they want you looking at your car.
Right.
You do not want to watch someone working on your car, okay? We do shit that makes you think that we're hurting the car. Hammers and chisels.
Flames.
And cuss words, right?
Torches,
middle fingers, and
banging.
Sometimes shots of Jack in between.
It does happen.
But it just, man, you don't go to some place and watch the monitor. You're going to be like, why is he standing there? Why isn't he working on my car? Sometimes it takes time to look shit up, right? You got to know how much oil goes in there. You got to go to a computer and read the specifications. You got to go there and order the parts, right? You got to go there and look up the procedure if you don't know how to do it, right? So some guy may come on and go, I've seen you staring at my car for 5 minutes. You're not doing nothing. I'm trying to get a game plan as how to attack this piece of shit that you brought to me, right? And you want diagnosed for 1 hour, right? I'm trying to figure out what I can do.
Shop's not a pit stop.
It is.
You guys are watching way too much NASCAR.
Too much NASCAR and too many reality TV shows where they rebuild a car and present it to somebody.
A lot of cuts.
There's a lot of cuts.
Don't do that in a real shop.
Oh, man, yeah.
And so I think those types of noises, mechanical sounds and things that you try to recreate with a client or driving or you always have those stories too. Well, I understand it doesn't do it here, but it does at my home 20 miles away under the certain turn over the certain bump. So we'll need to drive over to my home and be able to reproduce this. Yes, okay, at that point we've heard the noise, but that doesn't help diagnose. You're going to drag chassiers out into the wilderness and try to hook them up. And even then, I mean, you have to understand how these things work. And when suspension is flexing and going, especially in the road conditions around here, it can be a number of things.
Sometimes a car can make noise if it's moved out of its normal operating range, right? And you get an excessive amount of suspension travel, there's going to be a clunk because shit's bottoming out, right? Yeah, it is what it is. There was story time. So the dude with the beep noise, he calls us up.
That is great.
And he says,
one of my favorite stories.
I open my garage and there's a beeping coming from my car.
It's like every 20 seconds.
Every 20 seconds, there's a chirp or something from this area. I record it with my phone. I'm like, oh my God.
Like 3 times.
You're a genius. You recorded it. Finally, someone that brings me some physical evidence of a noise, right? So I'm listening to this phone and I hear it, chirp, a little beep or whatever the case is, right? And I said, okay, cool. Leave it in the shop. Half a day goes by.
This was the third time after he brought it.
Yeah,
he brought it the first time. Nothing's wrong with the car.
Sat all day in the shop.
Any noise here while it's here.
And
that's preposterous that you guys are. How can you think that? He really was getting pretty upset by the third time when you had talked to him and he brought the car back and kind of calmed him down and said, "We're going to fix this. We'll take care of it.
Just leave it here." Yeah. So
just leave the car here. I'll monitor it.
Even where he had his phone, there was nothing that moved in that area. Right. Nothing that was a motor or electronic. It was a dead spot where that's what it baffled me. Like, okay, I love those cars. So it fucked me because I spent so much time on piece of shit repairs, but I was the guy that fixed them. Right. So I don't know, it kind of made me feel like it was worth it, right? To spend that time to do that kind of shit to those cars. So the car's in the shop, the customer calls back and he goes, "It's making the noise right now." Like, sir, do you know your car is here? And he's like, "What are you talking about?" Like, you left your car with us yesterday or whatever the case is. He says, "No, I didn't."
car's here in
goes
the
and
shop.
opens the
It's
garage
still
door.
making the
Holy
noise.
shit, my car is not here. You have my car. Yeah.
It was
God damn
his
it.
sump pump battery.
Yeah,
or
something in his garage.
It was intermittently
So,
beeping. He was convinced it was
Case
the
closed,
car.
right? Okay. Give him
He
the
did
car
apologize.
back. Yeah. Give him the car back. What happened a week later? He called back and said the car's making the same noise again. Sir, we went over this. It's in your garage where the car is back. No, it's making the noise again. I recorded it, same area. I swear to God. I'm not sure if you remember that part, but he called back. Like, we already diagnosed this. It was error with the
probably
garage.
second visit. Yeah.
Yeah. Just unbelievable.
Crazy stuff.
Holy shit.
People's complaints sometimes. Well, when you buy a $120,000 car, you do expect a certain level of perfection. And no matter what, anything that's man-made is going to have
It's
potential failures.
Yeah, man-made and mass-produced.
Mhm.
You know, again, there's something that the stars align and one car gets every good part that was ever made installed on it, never has a problem.
And those types of people tend to flock towards those high-level cars, and they're that type A personality. And so those two worlds collide, and they're expecting perfection. And we have to figure out either how to give them that perfection or explain why things work the way they work. We get a lot of errors and issues now with modern radar sensors, either between the collision alert or blind spot assist, anything that's working on those radar frequency bands. They're going to get so much interference with outside influence that it can unfortunately give you false signals, and you'll have the message coming up that collision is imminent, and it may occur in the same place over and over again, or you'll get a blind spot, a false flag from a blind spot assist. And there's nothing that we can do to get around that. There may be a software update to help minimize it, but those systems are designed to accept outside influence. So there are some cases too where, yes, it may not be doing exactly what you hoped or anticipated it would be doing or is advertised, but there's just nothing that shop or technician can do to repair that failure.
Well, remember that
symptom.
Remember the faulty car, the coffee alert, the customer.
Oh, yeah.
The customer straight up fucking said, "I've almost fallen asleep at the wheel and the car did not."
It didn't remind me to pull over.
It didn't warn me.
Okay.
Like, can you repeat that so we can hear that out loud again?
Right.
The car did not alert me to not fall asleep.
Or you'll get the people that says, my car is equipped with collision prevention plus, which will actively brake in the event of a collision. I've tested it and it won't, the brakes won't apply.
Why do
I've
they do
run
that?
as fast as I can into the car behind me and the brakes don't come on.
Just trust that the car's going to do what it's going to do.
Not supposed to be tested that way. It's just a emergency technique to minimize the collision. The modern systems have gotten a lot better. Well, they will stop you, or you can adjust how quickly it'll stop you, how close you are to someone. But when that first, versions came out, it would only minimize the impact.
Right.
It wouldn't completely stop you before you got it. It just, if you weren't fully applying the brake, it would 100% apply the brake.
Well, look at the first version of self-park E-Class.
Yeah.
The version of self-park was a diagram on the dash and how far to steer your
turn the wheel. Right.
And then there literally took a 10-second parking process and made it a minute and a half. Because you're trying to
than necessary.
You're trying to fill this graph for it to say beep.
It's like
go ahead and reverse.
Oh my god! Clicking the shifter and then the other way.
I remember training and they're like, "This is the best. We're the first one to come out with this." And you're like, "It's fucking garbage."
It is bullshit.
It's spend more time staring. I'm staring at the screen.
It was.
Right?
It's a lot better now.
Well, yeah, you just
it's amazing. You don't have to apply throttle or brake. But anyway, the first versions, if you're getting a brand new car with brand new features, really read the fine print. They may not be what their what the headline advertisement is. It may require some input or some some guidance from yourself. But yeah, there's a lot of features on modern cars that I think really promote people thinking there's an issue when there's not.
Oh, right, yeah.
Remote start through cell phones, those are something we deal with all the time now too. Instead of having a remote fob key that starts the car, there's an app you download, there's a cell phone built into the car, and it will initiate once you sign in and do all the
so many layers of communication. And cell phones nowadays, they're nowhere I'm sorry, they're like a million times smarter than they were cell phones of 5 years ago, right?
Sure. When the cars were being produced and they were designed.
Now you can't even turn on your cell phone and have it work. It's got to turn on. It's got to connect to the internet. It's got to download whatever quick update it's got or some functions. You can't even use your cell phone sometimes if you don't have Wi-Fi. And I'm not just talking about call somebody or send a picture. Sometimes the settings don't work or you can't turn off an app because it has to communicate with the internet or something. Right.
And you'll have that too with the remote starting. If the car's in a parking garage or it's in a bad signal area, don't really know what cell phone service each manufacturer uses, but in my experience, it doesn't seem to be the best, highest quality Verizon or whoever advertises the most coverage. They don't seem to work as advertised all the time. So even just things to keep in mind. There are things that will happen outside of our control.
Right. So satellite radio. You live in a big city like Chicago or St. Louis, whatever, with a bunch of buildings.
Yeah, they block the signal.
You get a car with satellite radio.
You can't drive downtown.
You can't listen to anything. You get a viaduct and boom, it's cut out.
Yeah.
Every couple of seconds it's cutting it out. And then not only that, it filters through, I think there's 2 or 3 different ways that it projects sound to the radio. So some of them sound like a bad ripped CD.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like really water. Yeah, exactly. I believe that's
echoey.
Like it's downloaded in one module and then sent to another to display the audio. Then there's another style where it's downloaded to the radio and played direct. So that way it comes out so much fucking clearer. But they're so smart that they're going to make it harder and harder to use or more and more complications. And it's just because there was a cloud in the sky.
Sure.
Or the cell service interrupted for a minute.
Right. They get better and better as time goes on. But there's limitations to everything and having the most understanding about things. And that's not everybody's going to have that mechanical. I think, both you and I think in a similar manner as far as when it comes to mechanical things and how they function.
Don't you put that on me.
Not everybody thinks about mechanical things that way. Everybody has their forte, their interests in life. But if you kind of think about it and do some research on things that you're having problems with, it helps you become more informed, helps you understand how things work and why things maybe were recommended that were. Doesn't hurt to Google. There's a lot of information out there. It's good and bad, but at least it gives you some knowledge when someone from a dealership or a shop diagnoses your car and says, after we've replaced this, unfortunately, now we need to replace this. Those things happen. We just had a CLA that came in with loss of throttle, wouldn't accept any throttle input, and it had multiple warnings that had to do with ABS and ESP traction control types warnings on the dash. Came in, scanned it, and it showed us having a faulty fuel pedal. And it's kind of an odd thing because typically cars, fortunately, tend to fail in a similar fashion. Just not something I'd seen before, but not necessarily, completely unquestionable. But so got the $500 gas pedal approved by the client. And while the diagnostic was taking place, the technician noted that there was some rodent damage in the engine bay, but didn't see any really wires chewed through. So put the pedal in, tech drove it just very short distance and brought it back and was fine. While the detail department was washing the car, everything came back. All the warning lights came on, no throttle response. So we ended up trying to diagnose what the issue was in communication between the ME and the throttle pedal. But no, we couldn't find any damage to any of the wires. So at the end, we just ended up running an overlay between the module and the pedal. Yeah. Put the old pedal back in, did the overlay. Everything was good. We put 15, 20 miles on it just to make sure it wouldn't come back. And it was good. But things don't always end up being as they initially appear. And sometimes, unfortunately, a simple and quick diagnostics aren't as straightforward as you'd hope. But it doesn't hurt to ask questions and be informed. Try to find out what's going on.
A wire overlay is when you run your own wires and bypass the factory harness. That's what we use if we're going to diagnose something. It's quicker to just run your own wires 4 to 6 inches or a couple feet than it is to trace inch by inch of a wiring harness, right?
Undo everything out of the sheathing.
Why waste a customer's money when it's not that important to have those wires run where they're run for the most part? Some, I I don't want to get too crazy, but a wire overlay is something that we do, and it's not jerry rigging.
Right. It's a factory approved repair. And in this instance, we were able to wrap it right into the stock harness. So there was no difference between, we just were able to clip off the wires. We repinned the connectors, did everything, legit.
Story time again. The white R class, okay, comes in, had a code for like a throttle sensor on the gas pedal.
That white R class.
Oh yeah. So the technician puts in a throttle pedal sensor.
the technician.
Uncle Denny. We can talk about Uncle Denny. Oh man,
unnamed technician.
Some characters. Uncle Denny. So Uncle Denny goes and puts in a throttle pedal, gives it back to the customer. Car gives out again, which you give it gas and it goes nowhere because it goes into a limp mode. And once the throttle pedal or the throttle doesn't know where it's at, it just cuts off all function.
It just lets you idle along.
Yeah.
You basically have no control.
It comes back and he puts in a computer, the engine module, and gives it back to the customer. Same problem. Brings it back in, and now it's the third repair. Anytime you buy a new car, brand new, let's start with brand new. In Illinois, we got a lemon law. If that car has the same issue 3 times in a row, is it 1 year or in?
It's within 60 days. It's a short period of time.
Did they shorten it? Okay.
Yeah, 90 days.
So,
if it's attempted to be repaired within, I believe it's 90 days. I'd have to Google it to be sure, because fortunately we don't have to deal with it too often, but this is one of the rare occurrences where that did come up. But
so if you buy a car and there's a fault with it and you bring it to the shop, they try to fix it. You get it back, the same fault occurs, you bring it back, they try to fix it. A third time, the same fault occurs, you bring it back, they try to fix it. At that point, depending on state laws, you can have that bought back. The manufacturer will give you money after, threatening of lawsuits and whatever else.
Right. It's a big ordeal. It's not easy.
Get you out of that car and get you into another one. Now, when they do that, do they A, fix the car, or B, put it on the used car lot and resell it?
That would be B.
B. There you go. So they sell the motherfuckers. So this poor lady buys this car. She's got 2 or 3 kids? I can't remember how many kids she had.
2, I think.
Yeah.
They still come in, actually.
Real cool customer. The sad part is the bad stuff happens to the cool people, right? Mm-hmm. The coolest customers that want everything fixed right, those are the worst failures, the worst diagnostics. The other people that want to bring you parts and you do what I tell you to do, their shit seems to go nice and smooth.
Sometimes it's a weird crapshoot.
It is really weird. So anyways, new throttle pedal, new engine control module. Now it's time for a new technician. So I believe you or the manager brought it to me and they says, listen, Uncle Denny's tried this. We're going on the third repair. Even though it's a used car, it's still somewhat new car. And, if we had the same repair, she's going to want this car gone. So we need you to look it over and fix it. So I'm like, all right. So I look at the code and I'm like, okay, well, to me, it would be a throttle pedal. I look at the history. Yeah, the same exact fault number kept coming back. So I look at it and I say, okay, well, it needs a throttle pedal according to the code, but Uncle Denny already threw one in there, didn't fix it. So what would be next? Well, the wiring goes straight to the module. So I look at the module and think, well, it could be the module. Let me look at the history. Well, Uncle Denny already did that. I'm like, all right, well, she just bought this car. Let me dig a little bit deeper. So I look into the history of the car. Another tech put a gas pedal in it and an engine control module. Oh. So now it's got its third round of parts because we got the original parts.
Right.
Then we got the second round where a tech tried to fix it. It was unsuccessful. So they bought it back. I want to say it was from New Jersey or New York because that's where all the cool auction cars come from. Yeah. It's all the fucking East Coast. Gems. Oh my God. Don't ever go to an auction in New York or New Jersey
or Florida
and buy a Benz. In fact, don't buy any Benz at any auction ever. All right. Just don't. So, I'm like, okay, well, to me, there's only one thing left. There's a couple. There's pins, there's a connector, and there's wiring. So I disassembled the entire car.
Gutted.
I pulled 30 feet of wiring out. This wiring went places it should not have gone, right? It was overly complicated.
Things already 20
we're talking
long.
About a station wagon style SUV-ish,
kind of
awesomely road tripping.
Oh, yeah.
We did some cool road trips. But so I pull this thing out and I go inch by inch looking at this wire with my fingers and eyeballs, right? Like I'm looking, I'm past guessing. Let's figure this fucker out. So I'm tracing these wires. Okay, well, there's nothing physically wrong, but based on the fact that the code kept coming back, and the only thing that can cause this code is a communication error between the gas pedal and the engine, right? So I'm like, well, it's got to be the wiring. So I don't think I ran anything at that time. I think I left it as is, and I called tech support.
Right. We got a TAC.
Like we said, you can have the dealership call for tech support, and they can send down a specialized tech, meaning they know way more stuff than we know as far as engineering specs, and they're the direct line between the engineers and the technicians. So every manufacturer has some type of a helpline or a diag place, tech support, something like that.
They're regional. They travel typically within a certain zone, and they'll go from dealer to dealer in that area.
Correct.
When they have problems.
Yeah, and they don't charge the dealer. They just send them out. And they want you. Yeah. They want them to help the tech.
Part of being a franchise.
Yeah, and they want the customer to get their car fixed. So, I'm like, okay. So
they could spend days, trying to diagnose.
Yeah, weeks. Oh yeah, we've spent plenty of time with some guys. Mm-hmm. So this guy I knew over the years. So I call tech support because I know what they're going to ask me. So I would ask myself, do I have an answer to their question? Because you spend 20 minutes on the phone.
Oh man,
they answer the phone, and you say, hey, here's what I got. Okay, go ahead and do this and call me back. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, for one, they're not even authorizing you to repair anything. They're just telling you what they want you to do.
Right.
You still got to get it covered by warranty.
Correct.
Right. So you can put all these parts on there, and warranty denies it.
Kicks it.
Like the engine.
Out all
Remember
the time.
The engine? Oh God.
Yeah. that's different time.
That's a two-parter episode right there.
Oh Jesus.
Lou fucked up big time. Multiple times. Anyways, so
we need to talk about the E63 engine at some point too.
Oh, there's so many.
The warranty E63 engine.
So from an auction, right?
Yeah. Florida.
Oh God. Okay.
Yeah,
so
anyway.
So I got this wiring harness out. I called TAC. They get on the phone. They say, okay, based on the code, go ahead and put a throttle pedal in there. I said, okay, now what? He goes, well, what do you mean now what? So I already put that in there. Oh, okay. Well, if that's not it, then go ahead and put an engine control module in there. Well, we already did that. Well, what do you mean? Yeah, we already did that. Oh, okay. Well, if it's not that, I hate to tell you this, but I want you to disassemble the car and take the wiring harness out. We got to inspect the wiring harness. I said, okay, I did that. So what do you mean? I said, listen, here's where I'm at. The wiring harness is out. I've got connector end to connector end, all 30 feet of wiring. I went down all 6 wires. I can't physically see anything wrong. All the pins have tension. I don't see any rust, corrosion, any looseness, but it's got to be in the wiring because ever since I took this out, remember I drove the car with the gas pedal on the center console? Yeah. I drove it with my hand, right? It was like a throttle.
The car was empty inside.
There was nothing in there but a dry. I don't even know if I put the seat back in there. I don't know, but I drove with the gas pedal on the center console or on my lap, one of the two. He's like, well, since you're at that point, we're going to send out a tech because the wiring harness was like $3,000.
It was crazy.
And it was one harness and it covered the entire
and it had to
car.
Be built for that car.
Yes, made per
that
chassis.
Options, everything had to be
So he comes
assembled.
Out. He comes out. His name was Ralph too. He comes out and his eyes. He's like, "Holy shit!" Like he looked at the car and there was nothing in this car. So he goes, "Well, I'll go ahead and put some miles on it and we'll see." I'm like, "Okay." So it happened to me, maybe 25, 30 mile drive. I think I got it to happen twice. Right? He drove this thing 500 miles with the wiring harness wrapped up in a circle and the gas pedal bolted up, and not one problem. So he's like, "Well, the last thing you did is move the wiring harness and I can't get it to do anything." He's like, "So if it were me, I'd put a harness in it." I says, "That's all I needed was your authorization. And now let's make sure warranty will do it." So we double checked it with warranty and they're like, yeah, it's covered. We ordered a harness. I didn't put the harness in. I took out those wires and ran just those wires down. I didn't even run the normal path. I think I cut the wires and I taped a note around the wiring stating wires go from throttle pedal to firewall connector. Right? Because there's it was too much to run that wiring back along the original route. There was no reason for it.
And we're still using connectors from that harness to this day.
Oh, we saved that box and used that shit on everything. And it fixed the car. It fixed the car.
Yeah.
Right.
She drove it for another 5 years, traded in on another.
I think I probably should have framed that warranty ticket by the amount of time that I claimed on there. But I think I had that thing for probably a week, because you can't spend 1 week on one car. I would spend little bits at a time going there, taking it apart, access something else. Some car would come in. I'd stop and fix it, go back to the car. But this, the repairs that you encounter are just, they're astronomically insane. And, when we think about the term diagnostic or diagnosis, I don't know, it's such a loose term to me where
It is.
I brought it to the shop. They ran a quick diagnostic. They didn't run a diagnostic. They hooked up a scanner.
Right.
And the scanner just did a scan and it just showed you what
codes.
may have happened.
Right. That's what AutoZone does.
That's what,
gives you a bunch of P numbers.
I just sent you that email.
Mhm.
I took my car to AutoZone. They ran the codes, told me I needed a new converter and O2 sensors. So I bought them, had them installed, and the codes came back.
And the light's still
What
on.
could be wrong? You are what's wrong.
You done goofed.
You went to fucking AutoZone for diagnostics. And another guy. Stories. Parks his car, or radiator hose blows. Car overheats. He gets it towed. Didn't tell me where. Just said I got it towed. I put a thermostat in it, a coolant hose. I filled it up, and it keeps losing coolant. I said, okay, is it leaking externally? Well, no, I don't see anything dripping anywhere. Where can it go? It's going to the head gasket.
Yeah.
There's 3 options: compression test, coolant leak down, or block test. His reply, and I don't even know how this makes sense because what am I supposed to do from here? So he says, I don't have any of those tools. I had it towed outside of AutoZone and I've been working on it in the parking lot and they don't have those tools either. So I replied, so then tow it to a shop.
Yeah.
But they're going to charge me up the wazoo. You've already wasted money on a car that has a bad engine, right? It needs a head gasket. Who's winning here? And if you don't have the stuff, am I supposed to say, oh, you ain't got it? Oh, no problem. Go get a stick and go get a leaf. Here's what we're going to do. Okay? Here's what I saw in MacGyver. I don't know what he wanted me to do with that. So anyways,
There are some hopeless cases,
Stealership stories. We're glad you came for an oil change, but you're leaving with a goddamn transmission.
but it's going to last. And it has a warranty.
Bumper to bumper.
Ah.
Hey, it's Lou, Master Technician from Stealership Stories. Hope you enjoyed the show. Do you need car information, repair advice, or just a second opinion? Let me know at www.cartechconnect.com. That's www.cartechconnect.com.